All right, it is time for TBR Jar wrap up. But it's been more than a week ago. Okay, so I don't have the right cards for these. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. This is going to be my wrap-up for my second set of TBR jar picks from earlier this year. I will put a link up above to my explanatory video about how I decided to do my TBR for the year, or at least the beginning of the year. But for a brief explanation, what I did was I picked a bunch of titles, 10 titles per jar, and I made 4 jars, and I put them into the big bucket of genres that I tend to read, which are nonfiction, well, not that one, romance, speculative fiction, and then I also made one for everything else, which is basically literary, realistic fiction, or any genre that's not speculative or romance, and there are a few. So that's what I did, and then for each TBR video, I picked 1 per jar. At least that was my intent. That was the plan. And then, and I did pick 4 for TBR Jars Picks number 2, and so I thought I would reflect back on how things went. Now that we're well into the year, I will be doing a video like this for my second, third, and fourth TBR Jar Picks, and reflecting back at the project as a whole. So, but today we're talking about the second set of picks. So this is what I picked. So the first up for nonfiction, I got Your Voice in My Head by Emma Forrest. This is a memoir, and it was 212 pages. It took me 2 weeks to read it, and I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. In terms of my goals, this met my goal of it is a book to film adaptation. It was actually on my 2015 book to film adaptations list, but I didn't get to this one. And it's also an owned unread book. It's also a memoir, and so those are all things that I like to count for goals, or that are goals of me to read. Goals of me to read? I'm not sure that's a sentence. Anyway, so this one was a tough one. I talked about it, I think, in a couple of my Friday reads videos. It's really she goes through a lot of tough stuff, but I did find it hard to engage. There are and when I read like sort of like a brief summary, I was like, oh, is that what it's about? Like, is that the focus? Is that the through line? Because if it is, I missed it. Like, it's there, but that's not the through line I picked. I found this challenging in part because it's not told linearly, and I get that for dramatic purposes, to go back and forth through things, but it's also, for me, I think it shows some sort of stuff, especially in memoir, that I used to be interested in that I am less interested in now, in terms of like relationships and stuff like that. I think for now I'm more interested in memoirs that are about art and art making and looking at the world a little bit, and this is very self-reflective. Now, there are a lot of mental health concerns in this one, and there's definitely a lot of trigger warnings and a lot of tough stuff, so if you need to check trigger warnings, this is definitely one to check before diving into it. So unfortunately there hasn't been any further information about the film. It's still listed as in development, so I am not sure if the film will come to be, but I did end up finishing the book, so I am happy about that. In terms of romance, the pick that I got was just loading here. Ooh, it's taking a while. The title was, let's go further, it was shorter than I expected, which is unusual. Oh, I forgot to say yes. Saved. Oops. I'm hitting all the wrong buttons. Apologies. Where's the board? TBR jars? Okay. So the title I got was A Case of Possession by C.J. Charles. This is the second book in the Charm of Magpie series. It's a historical male romance mystery series. I read the first one, The Magpie Lord, because it was part of the Vaginal Fantasy Book Club, and I really enjoyed it. I gave the first one in the series 5 out of 5. I loved it. I was surprised that I hadn't continued reading it. until now. And so I did finish book number 2, which is this one, A Case of Possession. It was shorter than I expected because there was some extra stuff at the end of the book. So it was only 190 pages as opposed to 220. I finished it in a week, but I rated it 6.25 out of 10. I did not love this one, obviously. It had multiple things that I found challenging with it in terms of some of the themes. There's some of the themes that I didn't enjoy. One of the differences between this one and the first one is the first one's sort of a bit more of a locked mystery situation. They're these two people, the two men are in a manor or something, and I can't remember. It's been a long time since I read the book. But mostly it's just them trying to solve something, right? This book is out in like regular everyday life I think it's in London, and so there is a lot more challenges in terms of them being a male-male couple, and they don't even often say that they're a couple because they could be jailed. So this is much more, as opposed to the other one where it was just like I was excited about the romance and seeing where it was going. This was much more centered in sort of like a dark, gritty reality of, fear and stuff like that. And that doesn't even have to do with the whole case of possession, which I'm not sure how I feel about what the story is. The story is really a mystery. The romance was very much not a huge part of it. They're not even talking or together for a lot of it. It's mostly following one of the characters who is solving the mystery. So it just didn't hit the same marks as the first one, and it added in some like stuff that it's not what I enjoyed about the series. So, and there was some of the stuff with the historical, it's also paranormal. So it's like a historical paranormal romance, and I'm like, I want to love it, but it was very much more steeped in the mystery. And I didn't love the mystery, and there were just multiple things that came up that I'm like, wow, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not very comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that usage. And so it just got it just wasn't great. So I don't know, like, it wasn't a great reading experience. So I don't know what to do about the series. There are a couple of, I think there's at least one more book, and there's a whole bunch of in-betweeners. And I might pick one of the in-betweeners about one of the characters. He has the protagonist has someone who's his kind of like a bodyguard, and I thought he's an interesting character, so I might try that side story and see if I like that, and let that be the test to see whether I continue reading the series. But I'm not in any rush, but the series is available on Scribd, on ebook, and I think a lot of the in-betweeners might be available on at least the one I was looking at was available online somewhere. So in terms of being able to read it, it's available in the different services that I use. So it does have that going for it. So, but generally speaking, and because I wasn't enjoying it, I decided to read it very quickly. So I decided to read it faster than I expected. So there was that. For my speculative fiction pick, I got The Midnight Folk by John Masefield. There we go, John Masefield, illustrated by Sarah Ogilvie, and the illustrations are pretty cool. And this one was simply an owned unread book. It was 198 pages long, and it took me 2 weeks to read it, and I gave it a 6 out of 10. So we're not doing awesome here. So this one there were several challenges with this one of which was that there's no chapters, and there's very few breaks in terms of knowing when you would stop. It is mostly like this for 200 pages. So, there was something on that page. And I did enjoy the illustrations, but generally speaking, I found the story very hard to follow. Now, this is from a while ago, 1927. So I found the story hard to follow. It's about a boy. He is, I think, away for the summer at a family, some house of the family, and he's mostly with some kind of caregiver, like nurse kind of person. And he goes into his family history, and it's hard, and there are animals that he talks to, and there are elements of magic, but I couldn't tell what was supposed to be reality and what was not supposed to be reality. Some of it felt like dreams, some of it felt like visions through something. I don't, and a lot of it happened at night, and I think it's supposed to be sort of whimsical and stuff like that, but I found it did one of the things that I really, really don't like, which is that I feel like it really, condemned magic users, and then but also would take what they use to make magic and use it for themselves, but threaten them with being outed as magic users. And I'm just like, no. I'm actually surprised I even gave it a 6, because that's a theme that I feel like is very, very damaging, and it's not like it didn't happen. So the using magic for your own self, maybe not that so much, but you can't say in history that people weren't threatened by saying that they did magic. Like, that's a real thing. So having that as a theme in a book is something I don't enjoy, and I think it's problematic. So anyway, so this was it just wasn't a great fit. There were some moments, I love the talking animals and stuff like that, but I also found it just very strange to not be able to pick up on the plot as much as expected, and the fact that it has no chapters. I can understand if this is adapted, or if it was a radio play, or I think it was a radio play. I think there are several versions of this adapted, and I can imagine it being sort of this, but I couldn't tell when they were going into things that were supposed to be like magical, or were they? Like, there was a whole section that was like underwater, and I'm like, how is he breathing? I'm like, I don't understand. So, and it just not a lot of hits and lots of misses in terms of close, but then no. So sadly, not a win on that one. And then my literary, realistic, everything else pick was The Stone Angel by Margaret Lawrence. So this is the first in the Manahuaca series. Lots of goals for this one. It is, I'm reading through all of the novels of Margaret Lawrence. Did I say Atwood? Margaret Lawrence. Canadian fiction is a goal I have. It's an owned unread book. It's also a prereq because for a Governor General winning title, because the next in the series, A Just a God, was a Governor General winner. It is 316 pages long. It took me 3 months to read start to finish, but I did take a couple weeks off to read What Strange Paradise. So it was 9 active weeks of reading, but 3 months start to finish. So it doesn't fit the idea that 300-page books I'm going to finish in 3 weeks, which is one of the premises that I was working for. One of the hypothesis, actually, of this project, or this type of TBR. I knew it wasn't going to be the case. Canadian fiction always takes me a lot longer to read. It actually is no surprise that it took me 3 months. I think I was hoping for 2. It took me 3 months. But all in all, I gave it 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. This could very well be my favorite read of the year. It was excellent. It is not harsh. It was emotionally challenging, but also very amazingly insightful into people and life and the complexity of the human condition. And it follows a woman who, what's her name? It's an unusual name, Hagar. And she is older, and she does look back on her life. She's currently living with one of her sons, and it kind of seems like she has these slips of her memory, and then we learn about earlier parts of her life. So it's sort of back and forth. It's not a dual timeline per se, but it does go back and forth between earlier in her life, and so it tells towards the end of her life, and where her life began. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. This is straight up literary fiction, and I loved every moment of it. I've also read The Diviners, which is the 5th book in this sequence, and I love that as well, which is one of the reasons why I'm going back to the beginning and reading all of her works. She has 5 novels in this sequence. You don't have to read them in order. It's not this is from the 64, I think. Yeah, 64. And she has one other novel, and then lots of nonfiction and short works and stuff like that. But I'm working through the novels, and so yeah, I am thrilled. So it was so good. Honestly, I don't feel. It was emotional. It was very emotional. So I will give it that. And but it's out of the 4. It was the only one that got higher than a 6. I think 6.5, 6.25, 6, and 10. And I very rarely give 10s. I think it might be the only 10. Oh, no, I think there was another one. But generally speaking, 10s end up being reserved for rereads. I don't generally rate something a 10 on first read. So that was really good. So overall thoughts, like, it was a really strange mix this time. I also feel like I fell in quite a pattern of reading because I finished a Case of Possession in 1 week, and then these two had almost the same page count. They were about 200 pages, and so my goal was to read, I think, 10 pages a day, no, 20 pages a day for 10 days over 2 weeks. So I fell into a very standard pattern of read this, then this, read this, then this, read this, and this. And it got a little stagnant, to be honest. Like, I was successful because I completed them, but it also felt a bit not great because I didn't love either of them. And I think part of that is just the luck of the draw. There's no way to know when that's going to happen. And I think I was reading those at the same time as What Strange Paradise because I did put Stone Angel on the back burner. So I did finish this, but not during the same 3-week cycle as everything else. I finished it way later. So I was reading these two with What Strange Paradise, which is another quite heavy title. So this was a slow read, this was a tough read, and What Strange Paradise was another tough read. It was a realistic fiction. So that was a tough week, to be honest. And then I just flew through this. I should have left this to be at least a lighter pick, but I didn't enjoy the setting. I didn't enjoy the tone. So it was a toughie, but I did finish them. So, and I knew putting the Stone Angel was risky, but I wanted to finish it in 2022, and I did. So it threw a bit of a wrinkle in the mix, or a wrench in the works, but I did finish it, and it was a huge win. So that's how my second set of TBR Jar Picks went. Let me know your thoughts. What do you have a technique for when you end up having a lot of things that are heavy at the same time? I don't know if I threw in like a lighter, I guess my romance often is the lighter work, but it wasn't in this case. But I just decided to power through it, which I don't know if that's the best decision, but it is what I decided to do at that time. So there you go. That's how my second set of TBR Jar Picks. I will be back with number 3 relatively soon. Thank you so much for watching.